to Daf Tes Amud Aleph, and the last thing we learned was that we learned from Sotah the concept of where there's a doubt. Nevertheless, we take the stringent side. So we said there were two criteria. It has to be Shus Yachid, it has to be the private domain. I mean, less than three people. And the second thing is it has to have das lisho, which involves human beings. You can ask them what happened. Even if they say they don't know, at least they could know. On the other hand, there was a suffix, if a animal holding a talmudic thing touched a keli or not, you cannot ask the animal any questions. So therefore, there we're going to be lenient. So now we're up to right in the middle of the page of Chav Tes Amud Aleph, and we're going to focus for a minute on that. Amar Rav Gidel, Amar Rav. Dover sheyesh boy das lishoyel ve'ein boy das lishoyel. You said we learned it from Sotah, but actually this criteria as to whether the object in question or the item in question you can consult with is b'hai kronaf. We actually from another pasuk. It says now the pasuk habosar asher yiga b'chol tamei. It says in the pasuk that meat that comes in contact with any tamei. Any tummy, lo ye'achol shouldn't be eaten. So it seems from here, when can't you eat something? Only if definitively it came in contact with tummy, as if to say, whether there was a suffix, we are lenient. Vadai tummy only if it's a vadai. A suffix tummy, but suffix in the case where you're not sure. Yeah, achol sounds like a suffix tummy. You do it. That's what one pasuk seems to say. It's just like we dashen by Mamza, the Torah says also we learn any fiducian Mamza Vadi Amrachman Mamza Saf. The Torah says it so definitively, it's only if you know for sure. Same thing here. Okay, but aim is safer. Then continue that same passing and it says, but habasa kol toy. If somebody is definitely toy, then yechol, then he can go ahead and eat. Yechol bas, you need to meat. Sounds like when can you eat? Only if you know 100% sure it's toy. If it's a suffix turn out, we're machmir. So which one is it? Vadi toy yechol bas, suffix toy yechol. So which one is it? Now, many times in the Mishnah, we have the same question. For one part of the Mishnah, it seems we infer that if it's in this particular category, it's mutter. From the other part of the Mishnah, it seems that in this category, be us. And we always say, therefore, you cannot be medayik either one. We're not sure which is the most important, the first or the second. But when it comes to the Torah, you can't say that. So the Torah, every word is medayik. Every word is so particular. So what do we know? So what's the case of a suffix? Must be sometimes suffix is also, sometimes suffix is mutter. Now you could answer very simply. In a Shus Yachid and Shus Rabin, that's the difference. If it's in a Shus Yachid, we'll say it's Tamei Suffix, and Shus Rabin say it's Torah. But as Rashi explained from the wording of the pasuk, here it is. The first part of the pasuk where it says, you don't eat only if it's Valatame. We're focusing on bossa, something that has no intelligence. So therefore, if it's a suffix, we're lenient. The second part of the pasuk it says, Vahabosa kol toy. We're talking about the person. And then we say that you can only eat if it's Torah, because when it comes to a person, we are machmir in case of a suffix. So we're medayik actually not just because we're clashing, but because the context itself. One is talking about where you have we're talking about the Torah person, he has understanding. So now the question is, so why do you have to have a pasuk and we learn Sotah? We need both. If we only for Rav, I would have thought Rav it doesn't make a distinction, but where it took place. In Rabbi Rav is a pasuk. It sounds like in every single time where there's a human being involved, which always be machmir. So we need Sotah tells us no. It's only limited to if it's in an exclusive place or a secluded place. We would have thought bein b'shus yachid, bein b'shus rabim. Therefore, itzach lamigma m'Sotah. We need to learn from Sotah that it's limited. That this chumrah is only limited to a shus yachid. The ema Sotah, so let's only learn from Sotah. I would have thought, okay, you need understanding, but in the situation of the Sotah, every party involved is somebody who has intelligence. But so we would have thought by Tumah also, it's not enough that there's a person involved, but also the suffix Tumah should be like a person or something. We would have thought that the one who generates the Tumah and the one who's a recipient of the Tumah, both of them have to be people. That means it's a suffix, you touch that person who is tummy mace, for example. But if it's a suffix, if you touch their keli or not, we should be tired. If we would only learn from Sotah, I would have thought Adi Ikadas Nageya Magir, just like the case of Sotah. If it's we need, as long as the person, one of the people involved there, one of the objects involved is a person who has understanding, we're going to be machmir in a shus. Then the Mishnah gives us a number of other dinim that happened by B'yom on that day that they impeached Rabbi Gamliel and they placed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah on top. The next one was about Tumah, so we're going to focus in the next 2 days on the laws of Tumah, which is a bit complicated. So I'll just give you a few quick round rules. We had a little bit of a chagiga, and that is as follows. In the first place, as follows. We have a number of generations. We know that a corpse is called an avi avoisa tumah. We know that if somebody touches a corpse, or we learned last time, if somebody touches a corpse, he becomes a generation lower. He's called an avatuma, which ranks equal to a sheretz. A sheretz or an avela, they begin with avatuma. And if they touch anything, they become tummy, becomes a rishon l'tumah. A rishon l'tumah only has the capacity to make a shein l'tumah, but can only be metame, food and drink. They cannot be metame kalim. They cannot be metame people. Only an avatuma can contaminate a vessel, can contaminate a person. Not a rishon l'tumah. If bread touches an avatuma, if a bread touches, let's say a via tumah, touches a corpse, does not become an avatuma. A bread will always become food. Will always be a rishon or a sheni l'tumah. That is as far as chulin is concerned. I'm just saying the halacha because that itself is going to be a discussion. As far as truma is concerned, we take it one step further. We say there's a difference when we use the word tameh or we use the word pasul. Tameh means that not only are you tameh, but you have the capacity to pass it on to another generation. Pasul means you're the end of the line. We treat you like you're tameh, but you're the end of the line. You cannot pass on the tumah anywhere else. So by chulin, rishon is tameh, a sheni is pasul. But if a sheni touches truma, the truma becomes a shlishi. So by truma, if something is truma, much more stringent by truma. So by truma, we say that if it's a sheni, we'll call it tameh, and the shlishi is called pasul. By hegdish, we go a step further. By hegdish, we say that a hegdish goes up to a fourth generation. We more machmir. If you want to eat karbonas, that it can be any tinge of tumah there whatsoever. We don't go to a fifth generation, but fourth generation. So a third generation by hegdish remains tameh, and a fourth generation becomes pasul, food and drink. So we had in our Mishnah, we had Rabbi Akiva who came along and learned from a pasuk in the Torah and Pasha Shmi in the very end that truma is a shlishi, goes to shlishi, that he holds chulin and truma both can go to shlishi. He disagreed with what we just said, and his pasuk is when it says in the end of Pasha Shmini that we have an interesting, unique law when it comes to earthenware klei cheres. That if you suspend the sheretz in the air, inside the klei cheres, everything there becomes tamei. What happened? The keli becomes tamei. So the sheretz is an avatuma, the keli becomes a rishon, even though the sheretz did not come in for physical contact with the keli. And then everything that's inside the keli becomes tamei, the next generation. So inside the bread, let's say inside the keli becomes a sheni, the keli is a rishon, and the sheretz is suspended in the air. And the pasuk describes that what's inside the klei, it says the word yitma. So Akiva says, why does it use the word yitma? We read as if it says yitameh. That means this sheni then passes on the tumah another generation. Two, passes it on and makes no distinction there between chulin and truma. So Akiva holds that from the Torah, a sheni produces a shlishi. Whether it's chulin, whether it's truma, it goes to a shlishi. Rabbi Shua made a comment. I wish we can resurrect you and bring you back, because you told us, first of all, you hold, Rabbi Yechon, there are three opinions. Rabbi Yechon holds the way I just told you before. When it comes to chulin, a sheni's end of the line, and truma, it goes to a shlishi. But you, Rabbi Yechanan, said that there'll come a time in history when another future generation, they're going to say that there's no shlishi, not by chulin and not by truma. They hold it ends by a sheni everywhere. So we have three opinions. We have the future generation that hold that it doesn't go past a sheni. I don't care, truma, chulin. We have Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai who says that by chulin it ends by a sheni, but by truma it goes to a shlishi. And then we have Rabbi Akiva who brings a pasuk that it goes to both. Now, if Rabbi Yechanan didn't agree with that pasuk, doesn't agree with Rabbi Akiva, which is what the third opinion is, then why does he make a distinction between truma and chulin? Why does he hold by truma goes to a shlishi? There's no pasuk for it. He should agree with the future generations that it ends by sheni, and that's going to be the discussion in the Gemara. And we're going to say that we learn it from a kal v'chaimer. It's a lot, no pasuk. It's grounded in logic, and the future generations don't agree with the logic. They feel this kal v'chaimer can be repudiated. And that will be the discussion of the Gemara. What exactly is going to be the Talmud Chaimer? The Talmud Chaimer is going to be from a Tvul Yom. A Tvul Yom is somebody who went to the mikveh already, was tummy, went to the mikveh, and as far as Chulin is concerned, he can eat straight away. Touches Chulin, nothing happens. He's already went to the mikveh. But as far as Truma is concerned, the first Mishnah Brachas told us you have to wait until Harav Shemesh. You have to wait till the sun sets. So this Tvul Yom, who touches Chulin or Sheni, nothing happens. Yet he cannot touch truma or cannot eat truma until at night. So surely something which is a sheni already, a loaf of bread which is a sheni in chulin, surely it can produce a shlishi by truma. If a tvul yom who can eat chulin There's no sheni by him. Yet he cannot touch truma. So surely something which is tamei and is tamei chulin a sheni. Surely a loaf of bread, a sheni, come in contact with a loaf of bread of truma should turn it into a shlishi. That's the kal v'chema we are going to use with Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. And we're going to see why perhaps you cannot learn from Tvul Yom. Maybe Tvul Yom has certain chumras. You cannot compare one with another, as we'll see. Says the Gemara. We're up to the two that. Since he has no basis of Torah, why the Beichen hold when it comes to Truma? Tummy. I want to remember that. You're right. There's no pasuk in the Torah to tell you that Truma comes from a. His base is the Kabul and it goes as follows. Shemuta b'chulin. A Tvul Yom went to make ready. You can eat chulin straight away. That means there's no sheni of him. There's nothing. And yet, place with truma, he cannot eat truma at all. So a kika sheni. But what about a loaf of bread that's already tamei? It's chulin, which is a sheni. Shepasul b'chulin, and therefore it's mamish tamei. As far as chulin is concerned, it's puzzle. We said before the word puzzle is a word we use for the end of the line. And then surely she asks she's with truma. This loaf of bread touches another loaf of bread, becomes a shlish as far as truma is concerned. That's the kalafayim. So how come the future generations say no? There's no such thing as shlishi because they don't believe in this kalafayim. Why not? They're going to say that there's a chumra by Tvul Yom and you cannot compare one with another. That is as follows. Malat Tvul Yom. You know why by Tvul Yom she came avhatuma. Tvul Yom himself started out. He touched a dead body, so he reached the highest, the zenith of tumah. He himself was an avad tumah, and therefore, because he started out such a high level of tumah, that's why we're going to be machmer by Tvul Yom that he touches truma, even though by chulin no problem, but touches truma, he cannot eat truma even though there's a shlishi. Okay, they say, sorry. You can in a case that we're talking about, a normal case of a sheretz or something else, didn't start out, so anything that touches the sheretz started out being a rishon. Who said it can pass down to truma or shlishi? Says Gemara, okay, don't learn from Tvul Yom of the touching of the body. Taste him with Tvul Yom the sheretz. A keli, for keli touched a sheretz. The keli also, and went to the mikveh. That keli, the Tvul Yom, also makes truma, and it never went high. It started out being a rishon, Tvul Yom sheretz. And therefore, we see that has nothing to do, totally unrelated with the fact that it started out by touching a corpse. A Tvul Yom, the sheretz, is the same thing that it touches a loaf of bread becomes also that you're not allowed to put truma in that keli until sunset. Said the Gemara, no. Ma'ala Tvul Yom the sheretz. You know why by Tvul Yom the sheretz? She came in meaning about truma. At least if a person would have touched this keli, right? Or if you touch a dead body, you become avatuma. If a keli touches a dead body, we learned by Oichedev that if it touches a dead body, the keli becomes, we said metal sword, it becomes the same standard, it comes as the voice. But if a keli touches a dead body, the keli becomes an avatuma, and the same thing happens. So who said that the law of Tvul Yom Bashed is talking about a keli that touched the, maybe we're talking about a keli that touched the dead body, or at least even if it touches shed, it's in that class of, but when it comes to bread, even if it touched a dead body, it will never become an avatum. It can never get higher than it is. So how do you know that bread touches a sheni of chulin, touches a shlishi, touches a bread of tumah, it goes any further? The Gemara, no, that chumra that you want to say because it can become an avatum, proves in klei cheres. Why? Because the klei cheres, you don't have by a klei cheres avatumah, and yet because the law of tumah there is only from inside, and a sheretz is suspended in the air, it becomes tamei, not from the outside. So a klei cheres can never become an what do you call it, an avatumah, and yet by klei cheres is where we learn out. And yet we see over there that it becomes a sheni by a chulin. So therefore, a sheni should make a what do you call it? A shlishi by truma. So the Gemara, no. Kechet has own chumrah. Malik kechet came at tam avira. It has a chumrah that even though it never touched the tumah, yet it still becomes tamei. So we see that what because of the chumrah of kechet, that's why we said that kechet is okay. Can maybe make a Tvul Yom of a kechet has to wait, also till the sun sets, because otherwise with truma you cannot eat truma. You cannot put truma in that kechet because kechet has its own chumrah. that you suspend a sheretz there, and yet it becomes tamei. So the Gemara, Tful Yom will prove it has nothing to do with the suspension, because the Tful Yom will not become tummy if there's a sheretz hanging in the room. Tful Yom will become tummy only if it touches. And yet we see that it's matame. So we see the chumrah that each one of them have plays no role in this idea. All we know is that chulin is a sheni, by truma becomes a shlishi. It's Tful Yom of a shed is a shul yom. They cannot have truma in them till sunsets. So the Gemara, loy roy zek roy zek. The chumrah here is not suitable here. Atzad hashava should have. What's the common denominator? Shemutarim b'chulin. The common denominator is mutar b'chulin u'paisim b'chulin. Rashi has a big problem with the word shemutarim b'chulin because they're actually not mutar b'chulin. They have a sheni b'chulin. They'll become pasul. So different ways. The long Rashi has a very interesting Rashi, but the different way of learning mutarim b'chulin means there's no shlishi b'chulin. Not that there's no sheni. They're going any further than sheni, but yet they cannot have truma. Have to have a shemesh. It's a koshke surely kicker sheni shepaisel bechulin, surely a kicker sheni which is possible bechulin the paisel b'truma. Now what that it should be able to pass the truma. That's what Rabbi Yechanan says. He has a bottom line. What we have here is Rabbi Yechanan says there's no pasuk to say that it goes any further than sheni. So chulin ends at sheni, but we have this kavachema from Tful Yom. But Tful Yom, you can eat a sheni of chulin, and yet he has to wait till sunset. Otherwise, he cannot eat truma. So the same thing here is that a sheni, surely a sheni of chulin, which is actually possible, surely it can generate truma for a shlishi of as far as truma is concerned. No, so what's the future generation? How come they hold no kavachema? But the Achaparich, they hold no. And you know what both have in common? We don't believe in kavachema. You know why? Even though each one has their own chumrah, but they have one thing in common. They both have a chumrah. Doesn't matter whether it's an identical chumrah or not. They both have a chumrah. Therefore, we say not. Therefore, the truma goes to shlishi. As you can yet ben tzad chumrah. But in a normal case, we don't have the chumrah. Not in the case of klecheres, a loaf of bread. Not in the case of cheres, and not in the case of a Tful Yom of a person. Maybe taka doesn't go to truma shlishi. And Rabbi Yechanan he believes that the chumrah has to be the same. The very fact that they have a chumrah has no bearing here because they're different chumras. Time we learned, Amr Bishi said, Minayin, how do you know? That was okay. So we've determined how we know a shlishi by truma from a kavachayim of Tful Yom by chulin. Now we're going to say, how do you know by kodesh? It goes even one more generation. It goes to a revi. By truma, it ends by shlishi, but if that shlishi of truma touches kachim, it becomes a revi. Or a shlishi of kachim touches another loaf of bread, it becomes a revi. How do you know that? Time to learn. Amar Rabbi Yasi. Amar Rabbi Yasi. How do you know that be b'kodesh apostle? How do you know that be b'kodesh goes further? And we don't say that kachim share the same thing as truma. Dinu, and it makes sense. What is that? Somebody who did not bring his kabbanis yet, even though he already had herushemesh, truma, he cannot eat kachim until he brings his carbon. So there's a chumrah by kachim that goes a step further than truma. You can eat truma already as soon as you went to the mikveh and sunsets, but you cannot participate in kachim until you bring kabbanis. We had before by a woman, by letters, by a sov. They have to wait. By nothing. How do you know to be kodesh? But you know, somebody didn't make up on it yet. Mutter betruma is like truma. Yet possible the kodesh cannot eat kodesh until he brings his carbon. So shlishi, which is actually mamash, even by truma is possible. Same sort of kavachema we had for terrible you here. Should possible truma, and then surely she has to be the kodesh. Surely she should make it be by kodesh. Same kind of kavachema. Since that a shlishi is actually possible by truma, surely if it comes in contact with a piece of meat or something from kachim, it should make it into what? Into a revi by kachim. We have a rule, dayay lovim and hadin lias kanadin, which means if you have a kavachema, the Tarfon said, if you have a kavachema, and then you can never learn, even though it's stricter, you cannot say the stricter thing should go a step further than where you're learning from. You cannot be stronger than where you're learning from. So you're learning from truma. The fact is, truma doesn't go beyond the shlishi. It's true, kachim is stricter, but you want to create a new halacha which doesn't even exist by truma. How do you do that? So we have a rule where heicha the mifrach. If the very essence of the kavachaymer is demolished because of this question, then what's the point of the kavachaymer? We don't ask this question unless you do learn something, but you want to learn more. So we say, look, you can't learn more than just this. But if there's nothing to be learned from the kavachaymer, if you're going to use that principle, that you want to be oiker, then we're not oiker at all. So therefore, the Gemara says that we have good kavachaymer. True, truma goes to shlishi no further. Kachim also goes to shlishi. But since we have a kavachaymer, there's only one thing to learn from there, and that is you go to revi. Says the Gemara. Well, we learn out shlishi lekaydish min hatoida. We learn out shlishi by kaydish from the Torah. So therefore, we don't need the Kalachayma to teach you that Kachim can become a shlishi. So the V, Mekalachayma. So what do you use Kalachayma? Teach you go under the V. Says you learn shlishi lekaydish matzayda. Where does the Torah say? In other words, when do we have a good kavachayim? If you can prove to me, there's nothing else to be learned kavachayim other than a v. So the only way to say that is that the notion that a kachim have a shlishi we know from the Torah. So what is a kavachayim from Truma? Come to teach you a revi. But if we didn't know shlishi by kachim, then that in itself is what the kavachayim is teaching you. That even though kachim normally is like chulashi and the sheni, we're going to use the kavachayim from Truma until you goes to a shlishi. You can no longer use it to go one more step to revi because it's going beyond where you're learning from. So therefore the Gemara says, no, we learn kachim shlishi from the Torah. The kavachayim must be the v's. Where do you ask? Where do you learn? Where does the Torah say that by kachim a shlishi renders it no good? So Truma. That Truma have a kavachayim. We're not learning anymore because Tful Yom Taka cannot eat Truma. Truma cannot Tful Yom cannot eat Truma from. So we're not learning more than there are already the Kavachayim of Tful Yom. What's the law by Tful Yom? He cannot eat Truma till the sun sets. So by Tful Yom, we see that Truma is like a shlishi, right? He has to wait till the sun sets, even though it's a sheni, even though he's tired and everything else. Right, he's tired. He was a sheni, so therefore we're learning from him. But over here by kachim, we're learning from concept of truma. Truma doesn't go beyond shlishi, unless we know that kachim itself is already a shlishi. So we're asked, where do you know it from? Shlishi going to tell you, how do you know that? You see, because it says in the pasuk, if meat comes in contact with any level of tumah, you shouldn't eat. Even though we in our phrases we call it puzzle, but in the Torah we don't find a difference between puzzle and tummy. The Torah says here that if meat of a carbon comes in contact with any tummy, including the lowest level, which is a sheni, you cannot eat it. So therefore we know that kachim goes to a shlishi. If it touches a sheni, it becomes a shlishi. So we know already the Torah. So what's the and if we just explained. Okay. So the time of this great rabbi, this great master Rabbi Yossi, I don't understand. I think we can repudiate the Kavachayim. This Rabbi Yossi was asking that. And what is that? You can ask a question. Let's say if a Tful Yom touches food, Tful Yom touches food will prove Shapasul betruma. If a Tful Yom touches food, it makes a truma. If a Tful Yom, the person who went to the mikveh has to wait till sunset. Touches something, it's possible truma, but it does not become a revi for kodesh, as we'll soon see according to Chachamim. A Tful Yom does not make a revi for kodesh. So we see from here that even though he makes a shlishi by truma, does not make a revi by kodesh. Shapasul betruma, the einu ois revi by kodesh does not make it possible by. In other words, if a Tful Yom touches something, let's say, it becomes possible. If somebody else comes and touches that kodesh, even though the kodesh is only a shlishi, it will not become tummy. That means that it doesn't go that a Tful Yom himself cannot go beyond the shlishi. No, there ain't no be kodesh, and that's the opinion of Chachamim. How do I know that? So therefore, Rabbi Yechi's question is going to be: you said that if a shlishi by truma, and so surely korban it becomes tummy. It goes to a revi. A Tful Yom who makes a shlishi truma doesn't go any further than that. If he touches, if kachim would touch the bread that Tful Yom touches, they don't become a revi. How do I know that? In Tanya, we learned. Abba Shol, just a few opinions. Abba Shol says a Tful Yom, he's very machmed. He believes that a Tful Yom, a person who went to the mikveh has to wait for sunset. If he touches something, he doesn't become a shlishi. Tchila lekodesh. He holds that as far as kodesh is concerned, that by korban is that a Tful Yom, whatever he touches in the line of kachim, and let's say it's in the category of kachim or carbon, it becomes a rishon. And therefore, if it touches something else, that becomes a sheni. And it touches something else, it becomes a shlishi. So what do we see from here? L'tamei shnaim. If a Tful Yom touches a kachim, it becomes a rishon. A rishon is metamei sheni, so it's tamei one. A sheni is metamei shlishi, it's tumah twice, and a shlishi passes The next one. So 2 for tumah and 1 for pasul. The tamei shnayim l'ifsal echad. It's betamei 2. In other words, there's 3 generations still to go. 2 that can pass on tamei and 1 that ends the line. And Rameir says no. I hold it doesn't become a rishon. I'm also agreeing that yemachbet it becomes a sheni. It becomes a sheni, and therefore. If it's a sheni, when it comes to kachim, it makes it a shlishi, which is tamei, because it can still go on 1 more generation. And then that shlishi pasal makes it a. And the chachamim say no. The chachamim say kishem shepaisel oichle truma mashke truma, just like it passes. If a tvul yom touches truma, it's the end of the line. It only passes. The food becomes a shlishi and doesn't go any further. The drink becomes a further. If it touches kachim, it ends the line. So we see a tvul yom itself. If he touch a tvul yom who's a sheni, he touches kachim, they become a shlishi, but they cannot pass on the tumah. So who's the kabbalah? Your whole kabbalah was a mechusik kipurim is allowed to eat truma, and yet he cannot eat kachim. So surely a shlishi that is possible by truma makes odavi, but doesn't tvul yom makes a shlishi. It doesn't go any further. Maskiv Lord, our Papa Rabbi said back to him, you decided that kachim, that a true yom cannot pass on beyond the shlish, and you have a kasha. We said so. So maybe like all Rabbi Meir, either one of the Shayim say, that it could continue. A true yom also can pass on. So it doesn't undermine, Rabbi Yossi can hold like one of them. So Rabbi Yechon says back, no. You know why I think he held like a chamim? Because he saw kadat like Abba Shaul. If he taka held like Abba Shaul, that a tvul yom himself can continue passing on, then why do you have to introduce mechusik kippurim? We're talking the whole time about a tvul yom. Let Rabbi Yossi say a tvul yom. A tvul yom touches, becomes a rich, and then a sheni, then a shlishi, and then it goes up to the V, right? And yet a tvul yom is allowed to eat truma. So it doesn't go past the shlishi. So surely that that anything that comes to contact with the shlishi, which is a pasul truma, pass it a V. What do you have to introduce mechusik kippurim? Let's talk about the tvul yom himself. Must be he holds tvul yom as a derabbanan. It doesn't go any further. So you can't use tvul yom as a basis for kabbalah chayman. And the kabbalah be a tvul yom is allowed to eat chulin past the sheni. Yet Amrit Oisid by Kodesh, he can make a V by Kodesh because he touches, becomes a Rishon, then a Sheni, then a Shlishi, and I made the same thing, starts with a Sheni to the V. Oichel Shlishi Abba Mach Sheni. So food that touches a Sheni, the Sheni Guf also Bechulin, that the Sheni itself is also Bechulin, and this Oisid by Kodesh, should make a V by Kodesh. Why doesn't he say that? Must be like a Chamim. Oh, you can say no. You know why I didn't bring that Kavah Chayim from Tvul Yom? Maybe he holds like Abba Shol, but you know why he didn't bring Kavah Chayim Tvul Yom? Because Malat Tvul Yom can have a Tumah. If a Tvul Yom, like we said before, has a certain Chumrah, it starts out by a mace, and therefore maybe the Tvul Yom especially can pass the Tumah on. We're talking about a loaf of bread to pass on the Tumah. No, I seen the Chusik Kippurim. We bring a Kavah Chayim from the Chusik Kippurim, which is also a person. Well, in Birkin, nobody asked the question, hey, B'chusik Kippurim, maybe because he started out on Metz. They said, hey, we're not worried about that. We're not worried about that. So therefore, the Gemara concludes that, and Rabbi Yechon disagrees with Rabbi Yossi of this whole Kavah Chayim. So let's just finish with just a few more lines, so we don't forget this little part. The Gemara will come back to this part, and tomorrow will be like a whole new Gemara. So, there are a number of Tanoim, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Loza, Rabbi Lezer, Kulu Svidel, they all hold, as far as, they all agree with Yechem Mazak, as far as Chulin is concerned, the Ein Sheni Oitza Shlish B'Chulin. A Sheni does not make a Shlish B'Chulin. The whole, but a Sheni makes a Shlish B'Chulin from the Kal Chaymer. A Revi by Kodesh from Kal Chaymer. That, but by Chulin, it does not go beyond a Sheni. Not like Rabbi Akiva, who said in the Mishnah that from word Yitma, he learned that a Sheni makes a Shlish regardless Chulin Truma. The mayor laid down a rule. From anybody who becomes the matayda, you are Torah. And the Chacham said, you know what, you're still coming with the Rabbanon. We want you to go to mikveh. We had tomorrow Shabbos, a whole list of things that that you have to go to the mikveh. Someone took a shower after he went to the mikveh. A whole bunch of things there, and so on. What do you call it? Yet so he said, anyone that is tamei with the Rabbanon and the Rabbanon mandates go to mikveh, if they touch kachim, the metame the kodesh. Now what? That it becomes a shlishi. There's another chumrah, and the shlishi can pass on the chumrah to a revi. If this person is only with the Rabbanon tamei, let's say he went into a shower after he went to the mikveh. So therefore, he has to go to the Rabbanon. Therefore, if he touches something, as far as chul is concerned, it's not tummy. Even as far as truma is concerned, not tummy. But as far as kachim is concerned, we treat whatever you touch, because you're dying, for example, Shni saying, we say whatever you touch becomes a shlishi, and that shlishi therefore makes it be by kodesh. End of the line, possible. Metam is a kodesh or paisel a truma. He says it becomes a shlishi, and therefore it makes a revi by kodesh. In other words, what you did, if you touched food, it becomes tummy as far as kodesh is concerned, because it can make one more generation. And as far as truma is concerned, it becomes a shlishi. So that's the end of the line. It is possible. That's a meir.
The starting point becomes that he's a sheni.
You are a sheni, but the only problems are truma and kachim. In other words, chulin is no issue. Why? Because by chulin we don't go exactly. Umutu b'chulin ma'isa dibra meir. Meir holds clearly umutu b'chulin. We want to prove to meir that meir holds that chulin does not go beyond the sheni. And the chachamim argue when it comes to ma'isa. They say ma'isa also goes to a shlishi. But as far as chulin is concerned, everyone agrees it does not go beyond. Rabbi Yasi Hada Amram, and just two lines. Rabbi Yasi says, well, Rabbi Yasi, what we just said, because the Im Isa, if he holds, Rabbi Yasi held that by chulin is a shlishi, then we should make a kavachayim from chulin that truma should be a revi. We should always go one step beyond, and kachah should go to chamishi, and no one says that. The Im Isa, if he holds that, and since he's learning kavachayim, if he holds that chulin goes to shlishi, then laisi levi b'truma, make the second kavachayim before, make a revi by truma, and a chamishi by kodesh. And by kodesh you go up to chamishi. So bottom line is that these Tanaim so far, and tomorrow we'll see the rest of the Tanaim hold that by chulin we don't go beyond the sheni. Everyone have a good day, and we'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah.